Lifeboat Live. We have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Good evening, everybody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass, as always, the other Captain, Mark Wages, and you are on the lifeboat. This is going to be fun. I promise you, this is going to be a fun one. If you happened to be on Marfoogle News last night, you probably caught a preview to this, and big shout out to Adam and Dex. They're really do an awful lot for the boat, and we appreciate them. We really do. Very cool to have a chance to go on that show and talk about this. It's really a better opportunity to bring attention to this. It's a great platform to do that, and we don't take it lightly. So we're going to have to jam around a couple of words in this, people, because if I just talk the way I want to, they're going to bury this video so far down that we'll be lucky if Charlie Murphy can find it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're going to bury this puppy. So
that was awesome.
What's that?
That was awesome. Good for Charlie. Heck yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to refer to this as the V. You know what a V is? A V is what the big hubbub was about last year, right? Everybody had to go get a V, right? If you didn't get a V, you were in deep trouble. So we're talking about a V that is being designed to fight Fen, right? The beast from the east has sent over all of this stuff. And Mark and I have been saying from the word go, this is an attack, right? This is an attack on those, on Americans, and that we see way in excess of the numbers that they're telling us about. So today we're going to tell you some really cool information that we found out. Number 1, yeah, Ilea, perfect. So this deal that they're doing, right, this V, is taking place at the University of Houston. And the concept of this is a little bit different than a normal V would be. It's really closer to Narcan, right? It's closer to that kind of a setup. Naloxone, and we have a drug already called Vivitrol, and Vivitrol is a shot of Suboxone. I mean, sorry, that would have been a different drug, Sublocade. No, it's a shot of naloxone that takes an entire month to go away, right? It bleeds it out into your system over the course of a 30-day period of time. That we already have. Thing is this, that blocks everything, right? Opioid and opiate. This new V is just targeting synthetics, and only one, as of right now, one family of synthetics. They want to fight Fen, Sufen, and all of its variations. So what they've done is they have found one molecule that is unique to Fen, and they attach, right? This V attaches onto that molecule. So we have receptors all through our entire body, right? We've talked about this a bunch on the boat. We have opiate receptors all through the body. However, so it goes in like a key, right? And it goes in there, and all of a sudden that thing starts to release, all kinds of cool chemicals that are going to allow us to feel a buzz. However, that part of the process takes place in the brain. So if you happen to, in the central nervous system, you're down by the bottom of your spine and it hits a a receptor there. That stuff's going to cruise all the way up to the brain. This is going to happen in the right that fast, but it goes across the blood-brain barrier, which is like a sponge, right? That keeps things from getting there that shouldn't. And there's the buzz, and it happens almost instantly. This blocks fen from being able to get through the blood-brain barrier. So it's crazy, people, but the fen isn't the poison, right? The fen just is a big switch that we get so much of our own drug from our brain that we go into respiratory depression and all kinds of other things, and that's what takes us off the planet. So this is designed only to go after one opioid, right? And the reason that that's unique is, well, now somebody could, if they broke their leg or they had a severe injury, you could still treat the pain. With something like Vivitrol, man, you better not get any kind of pain, because anything that they're going to do to give you any kind of relief is going to be blocked by the 30-day blocking dose, which is a tough thing. So this is very, very specified. Where this gets crazy is this is funded by the United States government. That shouldn't be too much of a shocker, right? With 300 people a day dying, the government should do something about it. But you would assume that would be Health and Human Services, or maybe the CDC, Center for Disease Control. Those would be two agencies that would make a lot of sense. The Department of Defense, not so much. This V is being bankrolled by the DOD, which has got to make you scratch your head a little bit, right? Why is the Department of Defense getting involved to come up with an antidote, so to speak, for fen? And if you want to just dive deep down this, right, these are opinions, right? These are opinions. However, if we weren't at war with them and this wasn't an attack on us, it wouldn't be the DOD that was trying to figure out a way to combat it. Here's the thing. There are opiates and then there are opioids, right? Opiates come from poppies. That's a naturally occurring painkiller, right? Opiate comes from opium, right, which comes from a poppy plant. That can only get so strong. You could never make any of the opiate drugs, heroin, diacetylmorphine, morphine, any of those drugs. You can't make them stronger than the poppy itself, right? So you can have it a little bit stronger if one year the poppy grows some sap that's a little bit better than the previous year, but you cannot refine it to get it any stronger than that top level. With synthetics, which we call opioids, it's the complete opposite, right? You can continue to refine those again and again and again and again, and you can just keep making it stronger and stronger and stronger. So Carfent, right, which we talk about on the show from time to time, that's the stuff that was designed to knock out elephants. All they did was take fen and continue to refine it and continue to refine it and continue to refine it. And they came up with something that, truthfully, a couple of grains of it, like you could get grains of salt, can kill you. This stuff does, it gets the receptors to basically dump every single thing they got into you at one time. And it's the end of the ball game. And it doesn't even have to be ingested. This stuff can go through your skin or anything else. Do you think you could make a weapon out of that? Can you imagine taking Carfen, right, the stuff for elephants, and making it, say, 300 or 400 times stronger than it is right now? They could do it. If they wanted to keep refining it, they could make it 1,000 times stronger than it is right now. Now, think of all of the things you could do with that if your soldiers were immune to it. That's a frightening concept, correct? If the DOD is involved, then usually it has something to do with things being weaponized. Not saying we're doing it. Perhaps somebody else is doing it, right? Maybe the beast from the east is weaponizing this, and the DOD wants to do something about it. But it is the DOD that's bankrolling this, and they're moving at lightning speeds. Normally, if you're testing these things in mice, you're probably not going to go into human trials for a few years. You got to keep going through these processes, and then human trials go in there's 3 different phases of human trials before any of these things. They're in human trials now. Columbia University and the University of Wisconsin are already giving this stuff to human beings. Now, they're not giving the fen version, but they are giving an opioid version, because the original version of this was for oxy. So they maybe thought that people were going to make Oxy a whole lot stronger than it is, or maybe they just wanted to start with that one because we knew more about it. But that's what the clinical trials are on right now. Is a lot of work being done on that substance at those two universities. This is a pretty wild concept. Right now, the naloxone, which is the blocker, that just goes and lands on top of the receptors, knocks everything off the receptors and doesn't let anything get back onto the receptors for about 90 minutes, right? When you give somebody Narcan up their nose, it works for about 90 minutes. If you go back 3 or 4 years ago, you could get Narcan in 2 milligram doses. They don't even make that anymore. And there's a reason for that, because there was stuff out there that it wasn't doing anything to. So they had to start making 4s and 6s and 8s. They're making much, much stronger naloxone right now. And with Fent, they're seeing cases where somebody comes in, right? They start to OD. You give them Fent and you bring them back basically from the dead. If you don't sit there and monitor them, in 90 minutes, they're going to die. Because the amount of, the duration of time that Fent will stay in the body, it's going to be there in 90 minutes. So oftentimes if they give somebody, fentanyl in the street, that person has to agree to go into care. He can say against medical advice, no, man, I'm not going to the hospital with you. Well, then the clock's ticking. And we are seeing cases of this where people literally, 30 minutes later to 60 or 90 minutes later, it's all over but the crying. Depending on the human being, depending on the dose, 30 to 90 minutes, but 90 is the peak, right? Naloxone, or Narcan, as most people know it, is not going to work past the 90-minute mark. And the new V is 3 months. That's the goal, for this stuff to work 90 days instead of 90 minutes. And if a soldier were to get injured, right, you could still treat him in the in battlefield situations. You could still give him morphine. You could still give him all kinds of stuff, providing that it wasn't Fent. This is a pretty wild concept, people. And the fact that this is being paid for by the Department of Defense is nothing shy of creepy, right? Don't get me wrong. I think it's a very cool concept that they're working on this. And it's an even cooler concept that people are talking about it, right? Because it's everything we can do to get anybody to say a damn thing. We couldn't get our president to say it when he met with the guy who's responsible for all of this last week. Didn't use the word, right? So we're pretty happy whenever anybody is talking about it. So it's a good thing any way you shake it. But, and by the way, it was Ilea that sent us the article on this first, so we really want to thank her. But once we got that, we went into a fairly deep dive on this, right? You can keep sort of going down rabbit holes and keep reading and keep reading and keep reading. They give you a summary, right? The summary just talks about exactly how everything went in the early trials. But if you keep reading and you get all of the documentation that the university started with, where everybody, well, when this project was first put up, they had to talk about why they wanted it put up. And this is common, right? Well, this opioid crisis has gotten to a point where it's doing this in the United States, and it is now the number 1 cause of death between 18 and 50, blah, 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 right? To justify the amount of money that they're going to blow on this to try to make a V for Fent. Okay. In order to do that, they shared some statistics on death totals. Oddly enough, those death totals are numbers that we've never heard before. Brandon, thank you so much. Really appreciate you, bud. And he's green. Isn't he always blue? I like it. You look good in green. So the numbers are new, okay? Keeping in mind that this is a few years old, right? Well, if you remember when we first started yelling about this, it's 87,000 people. 87,000 people a year are ODing in this country. We're losing 87,000 people a year. The following year, it went to 107,000. Okay. So in their literature, it said 99,000 people OD'd specifically on nothing but opiates. Not last year, the year before. That's 13,000 people unaccounted for in what we've been told versus what they put in that study. 13,000 people. That's a huge number, right? So we've been screaming about this forever, man. There's no way that the numbers are right. They don't add up because they're forever stepping on themselves and saying something stupid like, overdose deaths are up 85%, right? From 100,000, they're up 85%. We might hit 110,000 next year. And you go, how the hell does that work? Like, I'm not a math guy. We've made that pretty clear. I was told there would be no math. That said, these numbers don't make any sense. And so this deep dive started to prove things that we've been saying. Number one, this is definitely an attack. If it wasn't, why would the Department of Defense be having anything to do with this? Honestly, people, you can go back and look at every other thing that has ever been done. You're not finding the DOD doing anything like this. And I did that. Started to look. The last time the DOD did anything like this, believe it or not, it was LSD, right? The last time they did something like this, they were bankrolling experiments with LSD in the 50s. They were actually testing convicts in prison, federal prison, paying them to volunteer to go through these studies. Also, you think they wanted to use that just to see what happened? No, they were thinking about LSD as a weapon as well. And so this is where we're at. And it's pretty crazy territory, people. It really is. It's a cool concept. We're not bad-mouthing the concept at all. But it's one of those things that, so you take this probably in a shot. That's at least when they're experimenting on the animals, it's done in a shot. Subcutaneous, not in the vein. And they do 3 different versions of it. So over the course of, the first week or whatever, you're going to get 3 different shots of this stuff to begin the whole process of protecting you from fent, right? This is going to protect you for up to 3 months. So you'd have to go back in, right? 3 months later. Do you think this is for addicts? You're going to find me a drug addict that's going to go in and say, yeah, give me a shot of this so that I can't get high on the stuff I get high on for the next 90 days. You can't give this to somebody against their will. That's not an option in this country. You couldn't force people who are arrested or any going down that kind of a road is not something that we do here. So the only option is somebody's going to volunteer to take this. I don't see that happening, people, unless, of course, it was a soldier, right? Soldiers can be told what they're going to take. That's part of what you get when you sign up. And we saw that proven out last year, right? Because the people that said, I'm not taking that one, got kicked out.
Summer asked a question there if you want to answer that. She says, is fentanyl overdose a painless death? And that's a legitimate question. I mean, that's a good question, actually.
It's an excellent question.
Yep.
Absolutely. It absolutely is.
Yep.
Let me, I think we may have touched on this in the past, but the way that opioids kill is unique compared to any other, let's say you overdose on cocaine or you overdose on any kind of a stimulant. It's coming, right? It's very obvious. You're grabbing at your chest. It's a terrifying feeling, and it's, here it goes. And very often those people will call 911 themselves. Something really bad is happening. I took too much blow, blah, 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 whatever the case is. It's a very obvious thing. With opioids, that doesn't happen. What tends to happen is the first part of the brain that gets put out is basically consciousness. So the person slips into unconscious. And we see this with the nod, right? We all have watched, right? The head goes down. And when enough of the gravity feels like you're going to hit your head on something, they sit back up. Eventually, they will just slump over, and it gets strong enough where nothing wakes them. Then the next thing to go is respiratory. You go into respiratory depression, but you're so calm that the body doesn't fight it in any way. It's just basically you go to sleep and the breathing stops. But absolutely it is. In fact, there were discussions about using this as the way to
euthanasia,
to carry out the the penalties for people that get the death penalty, because the system that they use now not quite so pleasant. So
don't they use
go ahead.
ketamine for that now? I think that's what.
No, what they use for it now is 3 different drugs, and so it does 3 different things. So while you're waiting for the second thing to happen, the first thing's happening to you, and these people are going into panic, and they know exactly what's happening. That's the part that people say, hey, that's cruel and unusual punishment, whatever. Certainly not going to weigh in on that. You guys can have any opinion you want on that.
Yeah,
I don't care. It's just the drug part that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But Fent is a painless way to go, and obviously we got about 700 or 800 pounds of it laying around right now, just from the last 4 months. That we've confiscated at the border, and that's just the stuff that's not pressed in the pills. So it really is amazing. It really is amazing. But really think about how this stuff is put together. There are things that are similar. After last night on Marf, there was a lot of comments of people who said, this stuff already exists. I have friends that are on it. That they're talking about Vivitrol, right? They're talking about a substance that will block you from getting any opiates. Instead of making the substance too big to go through the blood-brain barrier, it just goes and covers every single receptor in your entire body, right? So nothing can go and attach itself to an opiate receptor in the body. Just can't happen. Right. A completely different concept. Definitely a different concept. Then there's another one where it's a partial agonist and a full antagonist, and basically what you're getting is buprenorphine over the course of a month, and this is actually gaining a lot of popularity with people who are trying to treat addicts, because you got to trust the addict to take the stuff at the same time every day. You got to trust the addict to do things that and if they don't, then they kind of go through this roller coaster where all of a sudden everything's really good, and they have no cravings, no nothing. Then the cravings come on because that window. Anyway, so with Sublocade,
you're doing good there, Tommy. I think everybody needs to hear everything you're saying there, man.
Well, what ends up happening, truthfully, is that because it's an agonist and an antagonist. An agonist simply means that it turns on the switch that releases all the feel-good chemicals, right? So it goes to the receptor. It's like a key fitting into a lock, and it turns the lock, and then boom, stuff comes out. Well, as opposed to every other opiate out there, which just turns the faucet on as fast as it can, this stuff drips. It's a partial agonist. It's not a full agonist. So it goes and does just enough so that the receptors aren't screaming and sending messages to the brain saying, feed me, right? But you do have to trust the person to take it at the same time every day, get into some kind of a routine. And let's face it, addicts are not great at routine, right? Yeah. They tend to sleep very strange hours, and, especially when you're first getting sober. So they have enough. Go ahead.
Isn't that one of the biggest questions about this thing that we're talking about, the V thing that we're talking about, is how long is it going to last before you need a booster?
Right. It's every 90 days.
Yeah, that's what they're doing now. And what I'm saying is, I bet they're trying to work on that to get it to be longer.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that they are.
And and me and Tommy obviously have talked about this behind the scenes. We've been talking about it for 3 days now behind the scenes, because it was like, what in the world's going on here? And we talked about, will they give this to kids? Will they do this, do that? Because it's actually, on the grand scheme of things, that was probably what would work the best to not let them even feel what this stuff can do.
Right.
If you do that, then there's no chance of them ever even knowing what it feels like.
Right.
So that is probably a good thing to explore. But this, and again, all this stuff we're talking about, this stuff is still in trials, guys. This is not. Yeah. We're not going out next month and getting this. They're not rushing this like they did the quote unquote,
right. The last one.
Yeah. So, but and that evidence of that, they've been working on it for 4 years. The study itself, 4 years ago. And we're just now hearing about it.
Yes. Odd, right?
It's crazy to me. But
and the concept was done before. This concept where you create something that attaches, right? Completely different than a blocker. It just attaches very specifically, was done a long time ago. The concept for this was originally tried on for cigarettes and cocaine, right? This was done on nicotine, and it was done on cocaine. Those were the first two, and didn't work particularly well with them, right? They got all the way through human trials, but it didn't work out. And I think this is just a personal opinion, but I think that, especially with the nicotine, there's so much ritual involved in it that, whether or not the nicotine is getting fully into the system, people just do that. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
it's so ingrained in them that, it's something. But yeah, it's a very interesting it's a very interesting discussion. I mean, who's getting this? And at what point do you give it to them? It's a very cool idea if you could actually give a V to somebody, and let's say a year or two or 10, this stuff couldn't do what it does. If somebody was doing something else and what they were doing was spiked with the fen wouldn't get them. And right now, if you look at ODs, people who overdose on cocaine, 80% of them are overdosing on fen. Yeah. If you overdose on benzos, the vast majority of them are overdosing on fen. All of the overdoses now that are coming in are some variation of fen. It's being put in absolutely everything. And, which again makes our job difficult, because when you start screaming about this in the beginning and you say, if you're doing opiates, you really got to be careful. You know what I mean? Don't do pills. Don't. Now what are you saying, right? If you're getting high, you really got to be careful. Anything that you're buying on the street these days, there's a really excellent chance that it's spiked with this garbage.
Summer is in here. She lost her dad not so long ago from a fent overdose.
Yes.
And, she was saying that there was actually Narcan right outside this room, and he was alone. And,
wow.
And, yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow. And Leisure puts in there one. I asked what her dad's name was, and his name was Shane. Very strong name. Love the name.
Yep.
But Leisure asked to put a 1 in there for Shane. But I'm going to say something about that too. Believe it or not, guys, I'm working on something for that. I'm actually been in. Me and Tommy have talked, and I'm not going to go into what I'm working on with that. But it's something that
years.
Right? Yeah, it'd be years before any of that even.
No, I mean, we've basically been talking about this since we first met.
Yeah, and I'm I'm still pushing forward. Matter of fact, I got a meeting on Monday at 2:00 with somebody that is going to give me some advice, and I'm going to ask opinions. It's a person in the medical field. I'm not going to get into exactly what it is, but it will help what happened to her dad, and not help. We're going to try to kind of kick that in the butt a little bit, try to help that with what I've got going on. And it is
Schrodinger's cat makes a pretty decent request, I think.
What's that?
Said about a moment of silence for Shane, and I got no problem with it.
Yep.
I think that's probably the right thing to do. Here's the thing. I know that that's probably torture.
Yep.
The fact that that was right outside is something that can really live with you for a very long time. And I know that, to be really honest with you, probably wouldn't have done anything. I mean, the fact that it was out there, it just doesn't. It takes so much of it in order to to fight the fen. It's if the overdose is heroin, right? 4 milligrams, and that person is sitting up straight like they have never done drugs before, and they're real angry and real sick. I've watched that show so many times. You give it to somebody and it's just boom. It's like watching somebody throw a switch. They literally sit up, usually very angry because they're instantly going into withdrawal sickness bad, right? Because it kicked all of the opiates off all the receptors. But with fent, it really is, it's so difficult to get enough of it into somebody, especially because of the fact that right now, almost all of it that's being manufactured is now a nasal spray. The idea being you don't want people trying to administer shots to somebody in the street, right? They don't know how to use the stuff, and it was difficult. And they used to say right shoulder, right butt cheek, left butt cheek, and you would do 1, 2, 3, 4, right? If you had to do 4, and they were subcutaneous, you just stuck them into the fat. You didn't need to find a vein, nothing like that. Well, now that it's nasal stuff, the idea that with nasal sprays, they really work a whole lot better if the person is getting some kind of breath in. And very often with these people, that's difficult to do. And I know that with normal situations, you push on someone's chest, right? You do deep chest compressions, and it keeps the individual breathing, and it keeps blood circulating through the body, right? And that's, even if you don't breathe into the person, hands-only CPR is becoming very popular, because as long as you keep that blood flowing, good things can happen. That's a very difficult thing to do with somebody that overdoses on fen, because you get a phenomenon that they call wood torso, right? Or tree torso, where the chest literally gets hard as a stone, right? It's very difficult for even first responders when they get there. Getting any kind of chest compression on people who overdose on this is a very, very difficult thing to do. And oddly, this is not something that happens with any other opioid or opiate. So this stuff is poison. It really is. And it seems that they continue to make this poison stronger and stronger and stronger, which again bodes really well for the fact that we're being attacked. For the love of God, you do not need to make anything that is 1,000 times stronger than heroin. It's a really bad idea.
There's only one reason to do it.
There's only one reason to do it. I mean, in theory, when it first happens, you say to yourself, well, they don't want to smuggle as much of it across the border. But the number of autopsies that are coming in where they'll find pills in someone's stomach that haven't been cut.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, haven't been cut. And, that's not something that could happen by accident. It's not something, even if you do a bad mix, there's going to be bonding agent, there's going to be cut, may not be a lot of it. You're going to find hot spots, but to find pills that were just pure, that's murder. And that's one of the reasons that people are talking about some very, very harsh penalties for people that are selling this stuff.
In Virginia, I think.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't want to say it's crazy. Is it crazy good, crazy bad? Honestly, I don't have an opinion on that yet. I'm still trying to figure it out.
What's tough about that, Mark, is that we all want to get drug dealers that are killing people, right? Who doesn't want to get drug dealers that are killing people? But if you really want to be realistic about this, there are a lot of people out there who are selling pills who aren't drug dealers, right? These are not people that have any clue what's in them, but in order to continue to be able to use, they buy 10 pills at $6 a piece, and they sell off enough of them at 10 so that they can get theirs for free. And that's a phenomenon that happens a lot.
Yes,
right?
I did it.
Yeah. Well, and with people who are buying this stuff illicitly, if you're the person with a phone number, right? You got the phone number to the person that shows up, you're not giving up that number, right? You're not going to tell any of your friends, but no, you got to buy from me. So it ends up with these people passing it down the line, and they're going to be putting people in prison that really weren't drug dealers for really long periods of time. And that's unfortunate, especially because realistically, they're not going to get the people that, made this stuff. They're not going to get the people who are big time distributors of this stuff. That's not who this law is going to get. Every once in a while they might. But as we were talking about last week, a guy got caught with 20,000 of these. 20,000 of these pills. If this works out like the last batch they caught, about 5,000 or 6,000 of them are going to be deadly. He didn't even spend the night. They didn't even give him bail. He just walked out on a no bail charge.
Yeah. Right.
So there is the attitude right now is really bad. It's not, it's going the opposite direction.
Yeah. Tommy says, I had it up there for a second. Said he heard the other day that fent, they were trying to get it in by sending it with Narcan.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, what in the world's going on? Oh my
Well,
god.
here's the thing. It's every time you hear something like that. Thanks, Tommy. Every time you hear something like that, it's just one more duh kind of moment, right?
Yeah.
This, why would you do that? Why is there any reason to do that? Because I'm trying to kill people, right? Like
That's the only.
there's only one answer to all of this. The answer just cannot be anything but this is designed just to kill, and that's the reason that the Department of Defense is coming in and doing what they're doing. Nobody, nobody in any business wants to kill 10% of their customer base, 15% of their customer base, right? That's bad business. That's a terrible business model. And you're going to bring heat, right? Think of all of the reasons you don't want to do that. You don't want to bring heat on yourself. You don't want to, and you want these people spending money with you, unless, of course, you're not nearly as concerned about that as you are just taking people off the planet.
Yeah, and it, this whole thing, when Ilea sent me that and I sent it off to Tommy and we started looking into it, it's had my chin on the floor the whole time because, I never thought I would hear those two words together, fentanyl and V. Right?
Yeah.
There's no way in heck. I never even considered that. Honestly,
Right?
never. And it's
how about DOD?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. At the bottom of that's the other thing too. It was at the very bottom.
It was definitely not where they wanted you to see it.
Yeah, and well, heck, even Dex last night on Marfugel highlighted it, and they went down to the bottom of it. And by the way, I have to say, my co-captain here did an awesome job over there. He did a lot of research on that before you went over there. And guys, it's nothing more than impressive on how quick he learned all that. So just know that that's what happened. And
the hard part, honestly, the hard part is making this so that, because the G protein coupler receptors. I mean, if you start, you can lose people really quickly. There are four receptor types that bring this stuff in, and they're only targeting one of those, four receptor groups because it's just confusing as hell. And in order to get this stuff, there's a lot of stuff on there that's just way above my head. So, you require watching it 14, 15 times, taking notes and going, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah, it becomes a bunch of word salad for somebody that doesn't do what we did. I mean? Even for us that have been doing and looking at stuff like this with our eyes for how many years now, even when we're looking at an article or a study like that, we have to concentrate. It ain't something we can just skim through and understand exactly what's going on. You have to look at it and try to take it in. And then what Tommy does and what I try to do is we try to come out here and put it in words to where everybody doesn't have to do what we just did. And that's why we do it. It ain't because we think you guys aren't intelligent enough, because you are. It's just we have to do it in that way so you guys don't have to spend 30 hours or whatever.
Or get really bored with a bunch of vocab that you're never going to use again for any other reason. The craziest part of this entire situation, I saw somebody that just said, they're dusting bills with Carfent. I've heard that story. I have tried to find specific instances of it, and it's hard. You deep dive stuff, and it's difficult but there are stories all over the internet of people that were poisoned from bills. To be clear, that's Carfent, right?
Yes.
It is not actually the same thing. And again, why is that here? Why are you bringing that over? It's you couldn't figure out a way to make that where a person could get high on it.
No,
I'm not kidding.
You couldn't cut
it's an impossibility.
You can't cut it enough. There's no way.
Exactly. I mean, you're going to take an ounce of that and 7,000 ounces of cut, right? And try to, blend all of that. Yeah.
No way.
And there's a pretty good chance you're going to kill yourself in the process.
Yeah.
Right. You got to be in a hazmat suit. When I was incarcerated, I was in Oregon for a while, and my domicile, the place that I lived, was right next to the office, right where all of the administration building and all of the people that help you. Anyway, somebody mailed in to them an envelope with powder in it. and it was not car, but it was fent. And one of the counselors that we had dropped, like for real, just went out. And on the bright side, it's one of those places where Narcan's all over the place. You know, like every 2 feet there's Narcan. So they were able to work on the guy immediately, and they didn't lose him. But the person that sent it in, right? They're never going to get out. Like they're throwing the book at people that the Steve has done so much. We talked about it. Steve has done an awful lot, mailing letters, doing everything. I get a lot of emails from people that say, is there something today that we can do? Because a lot of the stuff that we talk about is education, right? Help teaching kids, things like that. It is a very, very difficult thing to try to do something today. We've always been uncomfortable with subject matters like safe injection sites, right? It's just a tough thing because there's not a right answer, right? There really isn't. I mean, to say, yeah, I think we ought to have those is like, you feel like, especially to people that don't understand this, it looks like, oh, cool, I got a place to go get high, and they just don't get it. If you turn on any news program and listen to what people say when they call in, and I do it all the time, it's amazing to hear people call in and just talk about us. Like we are just the scum of the earth, and we would just be better off if that fent killed every one of us. That's the attitude of so many people. So it's a difficult subject, but there are things out there that we could do today that nobody should give a crap about. Like this should not offend anybody. Fent test strips, right? This is not a tough concept. Fent test strips. Nobody's getting high on them, right? All these do is protect people's lives. That's all they do. And here where I live, I took a picture once and sent it to Mark. On the side of a pole in the middle of downtown is a box that says in big letters on the outside, emergency Narcan. And if you open that box, there's 5 or 6 nasal inhalers put in there at all times. That's not done by the state. That's business owners that had so many people ODing in front of their businesses that they just said, screw it, we're doing this. I don't care who likes it. And since that happened, they're popping up everywhere. Now they've taken to putting fent test strips, boxes of them in there. Go ahead and take a couple, because that's nuts and bolts stuff that could be done today, because people, like we said, they're lying about the numbers. Yes. If they're not lying about the numbers, 278 people a day.
Still a big number.
Big number. We've been saying for a long time that we think it's considerably more than that, right? Yep. And we're going to get proven right. It's not going to be a fun thing, but we're definitely going to be proven right.
Summer had another question here. I think is definitely worth talking about a little bit here. Let me scroll back up to it.
All righty.
She was asking that because she said that the pills that they found her dad with had an M30 on it, and she was asking.
Yes.
She was asking if would dad had told her dad that was fentanyl.
Well, here's the problem. The vast majority of the counterfeit pills in the U.S. say M30 on them, regardless of color. The rainbow ones, they all say M30, but so do perk 30s, right? That's the reason that they put M30 on the side of these pills, because real, legit from the pharmacy perk 30s say M-30 on the side of them. So unless you're really, and if you're sick or you're in the game, you're probably not bothering to take a whole lot of time. No, you're not. More than likely you're either. You're probably crushing it to snort it or bang it or whatever. But it's almost a guarantee that that they're going to say M30. They all do. Yeah. They all do. Which is pretty sad.
If he'd been doing it for a while, he may have known what he was looking at.
He may have.
But at the end of the day, Summer, I'm not sure if it matters a whole lot. I don't know what, and that's a natural thought that you've had. Okay, you're probably wondering, well, why would he do that if he knew it? This, that, and the other. And I would say this too, because this question comes up a lot. When somebody passes away on the stuff, the first people to get in line to that drug dealer, if they know where it came from, are the addicts. They rush right over there. They want that stuff, guys. And that's kind of what we're trying to say here. And so no one, if he did, then yeah, I mean, he might have, but at the end of the day, in that instance, it probably didn't matter a whole lot, especially if he was by itself. I don't think anything would have been changed. Is what
You know what? When you're sick,
yeah,
what it does to people, we say it all the time. Like nobody in their right mind, would take water out of a toilet in a prison, right, to inject with. But I've seen people where the sink was broken, and these guys are just. I mean, people go to lengths that don't make any sense. But that's it's not in your right mind. Rip Curl said, "Can you imagine?
it's
just
up
dropping this stuff out of an airplane, right?"
I got the comment up there now.
Yeah, if you were to spray Carfent, and just food for thought, there's nothing to stop them from making that 100, 200, 400 times stronger than it is. This is why opioids are terrifying and opiates are not. No one's saying heroin is a good thing, but you knew what you were getting, and when you bought it, every junkie on the street said, if I do more than a quarter gram, right, then I'm getting into that area where if this stuff is really good, it might kill me. And people who did it for a long time really knew what their tolerance was. How is this stuff? It's really good. I'll do a little less, right? It was so you didn't. Every once in a while, someone would OD, and we'd be shocked, right? Like, do you think he did it on purpose? How could somebody OD on this? Like, it was just really an odd thing. But with this stuff, they can continue to just make it stronger and stronger and stronger. So if they were to weaponize this, Rip, what they'd be spraying out, I bet, would be way worse than the car.
Yeah.
There's no reason to think that if you're weaponizing it, why not?
What
right?
about, like, and this is what me and you kind of talked about just a little bit behind the scenes. What if they were giving it to our soldiers on either side, whoever has it, and then they just come through with some big massive cloud of high dose fentanyl, and all your soldiers got to do there is just stand there and wait, because it's not affecting them. It's going to kill the other side completely. They're just going to fall out. And that's,
yep.
This is what we're talking about. This is why, and don't think that me and Tommy's brain went there right away. We didn't go there until we seen the DOD was involved. I mean, I would have never even thought that big of a thing, what we're talking about with what I just said and with what Rip just said. Why would we ever think that unless something like that I just don't get it.
Well, and full disclosure, I was so deep into this that I was like tripping on chemical formulas and G protein couplers and mu receptors versus kappa receptors, and Mark sent me a text that said, "Man, what if they use this crap as a weapon?" And I remember just like going, "Holy mackerel!" Like, that's the scariest concept I have ever heard. But it's the DOD people. Yeah. Like, how many movies have we seen our entire life, right? How many movies have we seen where the Department of Defense wants to turn it into a weapon, right? Like, it didn't matter what it was. A guy was a good football player. They wanted to turn him into a weapon. That was every single movie of the 80s. But this is real. This is what's happening. There's a reason that they want to be able to make some people immune to this stuff.
Yeah, Rip says it right there pretty much. It's just really quick, like, he says that's the only reason I would think they would ever invent a cure or a V from, fent. Why, because there's really no other reason unless they're really going to try to initiate this for, like, kids at the beginning and make people take it as they're going through life.
Good comment. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Great comment from Brian D. Sorry.
I've seen that too.
Because regular 4 milligram does often find itself ineffective against fent. The double strength is becoming more prevalent.
Yep.
Cloxidone contains 8 milligrams of naloxone per spray, whereas Narcan only contains 4 milligrams of naloxone. And the crazy thing, Brian D., is that it used to be 2. Yep. Right? When I was in the life, Narcan came in 2 milligram doses.
Yeah.
Like, there weren't 4 milligrams. There was absolutely no need for it, because there weren't, opioids weren't really a thing. It was just opiates, and 2 milligrams was going to bring you out unless you were just Keith Richards and then they would hit you with it twice. And by the second one, you're definitely going to wake up. It was a very rare thing that somebody required 3, right? Which would have been 6 milligrams. Now the first dose is 8. Crazy.
I'm going to put myself on camera here with you just for a second. Hold on a minute here. Show self. There we go. Okay. First off, I got the hat on that Ilea sent me from where I was on her show, just so everybody understands that.
Yes.
It's a pink beanie I won over on the survival games. Get over there, check that channel out. It's awesome. This is Narcan.
Yep.
Okay? In case you guys are wondering, I know there's people out there that have never seen this. This is the nasal spray. Okay? That's what that is. So this is 4 milligrams. You can't really even get it 2 anymore. I don't even think they make it.
They don't. It's been discontinued.
Yeah. So, and what Brian's talking about here is double strength of this. So, and it needs to be that way.
Yeah.
It needs to be that way.
And the sad thing is that we're up in the antidote, right? No reason whatsoever to make the product stronger. But as we're up in the antidote, they're up in the product. It makes no sense. It really makes no sense whatsoever, but that's the way it is. I do want to do a shout out real quick because Full of Hope sent me 2 really, really cool videos. Full of Hope, I really appreciate it. The songs that were recorded in the prison was just great stuff. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, we appreciate all you guys. And
no question. Hey, B. Crispin.
Appreciate it, B. All right. Bye-bye.
Brian D says, even if it's not about a weapons organization of it being dropped on troops, just the amount of young people they are losing is a Vietnam and a half a year. Yeah, exactly. The number of people that this has taken out already is about 4 World War IIs for the American side, right? I mean, we're over a million. We're over 1 million people. There was another statistic in there that I wanted to get before we run out of time here. There was a statistic in there on the number of years that Fent has cost us. Very odd, right? So they're saying that life expectancy now is about 77. Used to be 79, but because of this stuff, it's been dropping. So 77. So if you're 40 years old and you OD and we lose you, they put down 37 lost years. So they can quantify this. And there's a reason they quantify this, right? It's not just, to talk about, because it damages a society. The more years you lose, that's taxes, that's the ability to reproduce. We're at the lowest reproduction numbers that we've been since before World War II, right? Why? Well, I mean, this is a substance. Nobody goes and parties on Fent to go have sex parties. I assure you, not really the way that works. It does the exact opposite in terms of making someone want to do anything. So it's the number that they came up with is 1,200,000 years. Wrap your brain around that.
That's crazy.
America has lost 1,200,000 years to this poison. And it's people like Summers' dad, and it's, they're not just statistics, or they're not just, they have names, they have families.
Yep.
This would be a really cool concept if this was being made to help people. Truth of the matter is, when I was in the life, you couldn't have got me to take this. There's no chance in hell.
Right.
Their story, if you read their line is this: when you get somebody into a rehabilitation situation, and they greatly recommend MAT, right? Medical assisted treatment. So you get somebody into medical assisted treatment, there's a backslide, and they just want to make sure that during that backslide that people, have this in their system, because it's going to keep them from basically failing. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I understand the idea, right? But you already have a antagonist that you're taking every single day, right? The reason behind why they say they're doing this is really odd, and it does not check out. It really doesn't. So not exactly sure what this is,
It is.
what it's for, but
I just flashed the days of sober up there so you guys can see it. I made it bigger.
nice.
I'll probably do that one once the show here, closer to the end of our shows here, so you guys can see it.
I like it.
You know, guys, that's how we beat it. It's those of us that are putting those days on the board there, and we're talking about it. And you know, I was going to ask Brian too. He said he has clients. I wonder, are you in the industry of rehab or recovery? I was just curious, just throwing that out.
I say probably, because his comment
so
says all of the clients' families I have worked with that have lost a son or a daughter to overdose are never the same, and are so destroyed. And there's a lot of truth to that. This is when we talk about the numbers that can't be quantified, right? That's what we're talking about. You can sit down and say, this is how many people we lose. This is how many people we're losing a year. The people that are still here, right? That's the stuff you can't quantify. The families that are devastated, or your friend who's out there right now in it, right, in the world. They're zombies. When people did opiates, it was usually once or twice a day. It had legs of about 8 to 10 hours. So very often the person would, get well first thing in the morning, and then right before they went to bed, they would do it again. That takes you straight up and straight down. So people are injecting themselves 4 or 5 times a day, sometimes more. Yep. And that's, these people that aren't dying are zombies. Like Mark has pulled up the images from Pennsylvania, right?
Kensington.
That Kensington images. If you've never seen Kensington, people go over and give it a Google. It's such a terrifying thing. And when you see this, you go, this can't be in our country, right? This cannot be in our country. But like Adam was saying last night, he said those numbers, I believe those numbers are just Seattle, because everywhere he looks, he sees it. And that's, basically every big city, but it's also small towns all over the U.S. This poison is so pervasive
everywhere,
right now.
Man. It
really is. And it would be really cool if this V was supposed to help people get clean. Sounds great. I don't buy it. I really don't.
And again, that I think me and Tommy share.
Alan, have a good day at work, my brother.
The same view there, guys.
Appreciate you being here.
So, I mean, it's
the way I approach it, or most of the programs I work with, is only the clients that are very high death risk, that aren't ready yet to have multiple recent relapses, are good fits for blockers. You mean like a Vivitrol blocker? Honestly, I don't even know what to say about Vivitrol. I have only known 2 people ever that were on it, and in one of the cases, this guy would time that stuff. Like if the month was a 31-day month, on day 31, he didn't have any of that in his system. And he had 1 day that he could go do whatever he wanted. And very often the guy would go 30 days doing nothing. And on that day 31, he would just slam dope until he was unconscious. And that was the 1 day he could get away with it. And he had done it in a voluntary program because the state basically backed off on sending him to prison. If he was willing to do the Vivitrol thing, he was able to do home confinement, but he's just still doing the life, right? But, and it was so important that someone would get over there right there, because you got to be here now, right? I want to do this first thing in the morning. I think a lot of those people run a really good chance of overdosing. So often overdoses take place on a relapse because your tolerance drops. I mean, if that guy doesn't do dope for 30 days and then he does, the I'm coming back out shot, that's sad. But
Patrick.
Hi, Tommy, I'll call you after the show if you're available. I'm so grateful, whichever of you are sober, because the stuff these days is so strong and awful. I hate drugs with a passion. Okay, I understand. I really do. Do me a favor, Patrick. Give me about 15 minutes after the show and then call me. All right? And we'll see what we can do. All righty, everybody. Yep. This is one of those shows that, honestly, I think we could probably do this 6 days a week for the rest of our lives and not, get enough people's attention. This is
we will revisit.
This is such a sad situation, and it's a really great concept that they're trying to do things right now to work on this. If you just believe that they are, and I don't know, I'm not sold. To me, this sounds like one hell of a weapon. That's what it sounds like. And if your soldiers are immune to it, it's an even better weapon. All righty, everybody. We will be back tomorrow night because this is our Monday. And so it'll be the same squirrel time, same squirrel channel. Speaking of, I am Captain Tommy Scoble, and on the other side of the glass,
Captain Mark Wages.
And on the other side of the glass,
Captain Mark
you
Wages.
must be muted. I can't hear a word you're saying.
Captain Mark Wages. Am I muted, guys? Oh.
That's a cat in the basket. Good night, everybody. We love you.